Later, my uncle gave me a lecture, saying that I didn't know people well and couldn't judge people accurately. I was not allowed to introduce boyfriends to Lola anymore. He also said that I was meddling in other people's business. Now that I think about it, if I introduce a blind date to my aunt, how could my uncle not be furious? Shaul Ader confessed to me that going to the amusement park that day was all arranged by my uncle. The purpose was to get me out of the way. After hearing that I confessed to my brother who has no blood relationship, he began to avoid me and dislike me. He coldly said, "You can only be my sister." When we met again, I pretended not to know him, and I didn't dare to cross the line again. Max, however, grabbed my wrist, his eyes suppressing emotions. "Whose house did you stay at last night?" "Brother, it hurts. Relax. Don't do it anymore. I'll be late for school. Bear with it for a while. It'll be okay soon. Then be gentle. It hurts. It hurts so much. Try making trouble again." I didn't say anything. Max frowned and exerted a little force. Finally, the zipper was smooth. "Today is the school sports meeting. I am in the etiquette team." Early in the morning, the zipper of my skirt got stuck on my back. The zipper clasp was caught in the fabric and also pinched my flesh. "Does it still hurt?" I touched it and smiled. "It doesn't hurt anymore." Max took half a step back. "Go eat." Early in the morning. So many troubles. I thought of something. "Brother, I heard yesterday that someone wanted to introduce a girlfriend to you. Did you agree?" "What? Find a sister-in-law to serve you together?" "What's serving? Last time you were drunk. I took care of you too." "Yes. After you took care of me, I wanted to call the police the next day." "Brother, I didn't do anything to you. It was just that it was raining that day and he was so drunk that he lost consciousness. As for taking off his clothes, I just helped him with this small matter. Men and women should not touch each other. Do you understand? You are my brother. Why aren't we close?" At the dining table. I was still stuck on the topic just now. Max was amused and angry. "Ancestor, be quiet." He was wearing a black undershirt and his arm muscles had smooth lines. At this moment, he tilted his head to light a cigarette. His facial features were clear, and he was very masculine. This is such a man. Giving up the great time of youth. Indulging in romantic affairs. Raising me up and supporting my education seriously and responsibly. However, after he finished speaking, he casually took out a book from my school bag and flipped through it. The title of the book is 7 Love Affairs with My Tough Guy Boyfriend. I instantly sat on pins and needles. So embarrassed that I ate like chewing wax. In a few seconds, Max bit his cigarette and frowned more and more as he read. "Does the teacher let you read this kind of book?" I pretended to be calm. "They will criticize but not confiscate it." Max read a few more pages and couldn't stand it anymore. "What's this about?" I was about to speak when suddenly I smelled a burnt smell. A cake I made early in the morning, and was going to take to school is now all burnt. I picked one and handed it to him. "Brother, taste it." Max took a critical bite. "Burnt." I paused. I didn't know where to look. How can you say such words in front of your sister?" Max looked down at me like looking at a fool. I said, "This cake is a bit burnt. I go to school by bus on my own." After the meal, I put on my school bag. Seeing that there was still enough time, I reminded him. "Brother, the teacher will come for a home visit tonight. Come back early and remember not to say anything wrong." Max was tidying up the dishes. "Got it. What are you going to say?" "Ask your teacher how she taught my sister to always say crazy things." It was clearly him who was ambiguous just now that I misunderstood. I am in grade 2 of high school and I chose science. The head teacher is a female teacher who graduated from college a few years ago. She is about the same age as my brother. When I went out in the morning, I forgot to bring my key and knocked on the door several times. Max finally opened the door from inside. He had just taken a shower. His short hair was wet. He had broad shoulders and a narrow waist. The water flowed clearly down his firm abdominal muscles, slowly disappearing into his long pants. I introduced in a flustered manner. Teacher Lin. This is my brother. Sharon nodded suddenly. Wearing a dress and with slightly curly hair, she greeted gracefully and generously. Hello. I am Wendy's head teacher. Max said. Hello. He turned around without changing his expression and put on a short-sleeved shirt. Sit anywhere. Why is the time advanced? I explained. The school canceled evening self-study temporarily, so it came earlier. I couldn't get through to you on the phone. I have already visited Lola's house. It seems that I can change my address soon. At that time, I have to ask for a big red envelope. I didn't hear it because I was taking a shower. In the living room, Sharon briefly mentioned my situation of being weak in some subjects. Max knows about this. He always says that as long as one does one's best. At the moment, he smiled for an instant and looked at me casually. How can someone in our family, who loves reading so much, be bad at Chinese? This person is so bad. He still remembers that love storybook in my school bag. Sharon didn't think deeply about it. After chatting for a while, suddenly, there was a heavy rainstorm outside. When the rain eased a little, the time also pointed to 8:30. It's not easy to get a taxi here. Let me take you. Max is tall and almost looms over the person opposite. They look very well matched. Sharon tucked her stray hair behind her ear. No need. It's quite troublesome. It's okay. It's not safe at night. He casually took a coat from the sofa and handed it over. Sharon hesitated for half a second, and her eyes flickered gently. Thank you. Max didn't care. Wendy, if you're sleepy, go to bed early. I'll take your teacher and come back later. I nodded. Silently, I watched the floral skirt not far away. The next day is the weekend. I used my pocket money and bought a floral skirt on the street. Brother, is it beautiful? Max was cooking and took a glance at me when he had a moment in the kitchen. Beautiful. Perfunctory. I trotted over. You men are just perfunctory. Max was amused when he heard this. Tell me, which other man has been perfunctory to you? I was speechless. I was just joking. Thinking of something. Brother, what do you think of our head teacher's appearance? Why? Just asking. Max turned off the range hood and leaned down slightly. Wendy, it's very impolite to evaluate others' appearances. He looked at me. His eyes pitch black. Something tugged at my heart. I know. Max ruffled my hair. Go and do your homework. I nodded. After taking a few steps, I came back. Then, do you like the type of teacher, Lin? Is this a question that a child should ask? I'm X years old. I'm an adult. Not a child anymore. I refuted reasonably and convincingly. Max looked at me for a while and couldn't help laughing. Brother, you still haven't answered me. Max looked away. I've only met her once. What's there to like or not like? Does that mean you'll like her if you see her more times? He lost patience. Have you watched too much of that stuff and messed up your brain? In the blink of an eye. It was summer vacation. I did well in the final exam. My Chinese improved. During the holiday, the psychological pressure was also a little less. Max and his friends formed a truck fleet and specialized in long-distance transportation. On the night before the start of school, just then, a group of people came to our house for a meal. In addition to some familiar faces, there was also a woman. Max's expression paused slightly. Why are you here? The woman had a baby face and said with a smile. We rolled friends. Aren't you glad to see me? Although she said so, she had already come in and put down her bag. Max pursed his lips and turned around without saying a word. I was puzzled and greeted politely. Hello, sister. The people around joked and teased. Little sister. Don't call her sister. You should call her sister-in-law. Yes. Yes. An ex-sister-in-law is still a sister-in-law. There's nothing wrong with that. It wasn't until Max gave them a cold look that the latter shut up embarrassedly. During the meal, I ate in silence. In my peripheral vision, that woman affectionately poured wine for him. While chatting and laughing, her palm inadvertently covered the back of his hand. Max subtly dodged and said in a low voice, "Save face. Don't be like this." The woman probably kicked him under the table and turned her head in anger. I had no appetite at all. I left halfway and went to the bathroom. I washed my face, but my heart still felt stuffy. I viciously messed up Max's towel on the shelf. When I went out, he was standing at the corner. When he saw me, he raised his hand and put out his cigarette. "Eat so little. Are you feeling unwell somewhere?" I shook my head. "I'm full." "What time do you go to school tomorrow?" "I'll send you." "I'll go by myself." "I don't want you to send me." Max thought I had an appointment with a friend. He took out 3 banknotes from his wallet and handed them to me. "In Senior 3. Be more attentive. There are many things to buy at the beginning of the term. Don't be stingy." "No need. I don't spend money." Seeing me turn my head and not want to talk to anyone, he frowned and said, "Be obedient. Take it. If you don't spend it, who can I spend it on?" I pushed it away in a fit of pique. "Spend it on your sister-in-law." Max was stunned and rubbed the back of his neck. "No. Wendy. Did I provoke you?" I didn't say anything. I slammed the door shut. There was a rustling conversation coming from outside. "Why are you pulling a long face? Did your sister go to sleep first?" "I don't know what's wrong with her again." "It's all because you spoil her. The girl is still young. It will be fine when she is admitted to college." "How is her grades? Can she be admitted?" "What are you talking about? Even if she gets 0 points in the exam, I will still hold to banquets." The conversation and laughter continued. It seemed that someone left early. "I'm not blaming you. Brother Lee. Shower OU specially came to find you. At the beginning, when you joined the army, you two separated in a hurry. Now that everything is stable, it's also good to live a good life. You don't have to be like this." Max's voice was very faint. "The past is in the past. Don't mention it. Forget it." "But Brother Lee, you've been single for a long time, right? What's wrong?" "I'm afraid you'll get sick if you hold it in." "Damn you." That night, I had a steamy dream. The dream was full of Max. When I woke up, I was all sticky. When I changed my clothes, I found that my period had come. Unfortunately, the last sanitary napkin was used up by me last time. At 5 in the morning, the air was filled with a thin mist. Drowsy. Max was making breakfast. I hesitated and said, "Brother." Max glanced at the pajama pants in my hand. "What's wrong?" "It's dirty. Put it in the bucket in the bathroom. I'll wash it for you later." He is a rough man. He sweats a lot at work. Even his outer clothes are washed separately from mine. I can wash it myself. Be obedient. Put it there. "Brother, can you buy me a sanitary napkin?" The brands that Max bought were very messy. He was also a bit embarrassed. "Is it enough?" His hand had strong knuckles and the veins on the back of his hand slightly protruded and spread upward. It looked very powerful. I inexplicably thought of the scene of the woman putting her hand on his back last night. And that dream. "It's enough." After getting everything ready, there was a bowl of egg fried rice and a cup of hot water on the table. My heart kept softening and warmth spread. Max was in the kitchen with his back to me. His shoulders and neck were broad and straight. His parents died in a car accident. Because he was fully responsible for the accident, all his severance pay was paid in. We were equally lonely, equally accepting the lash of fate. But he managed to support a family for me. "What are you smiling at?" Only then did I notice the upturned corner of my mouth. "Nothing. Do you want to ask for a week off and rest at home for a few days? It's not that serious." Don't eat cold or icy food at school. Tell the teacher in physical education class and don't do strenuous exercise. He is always like this. He looks fierce. But in fact he is gentle and careful. I nodded. I know. You are so nagging. Max sat down beside me and chuckled. Not angry with me anymore? I glared at him. I'm still angry now. He raised his eyebrows. Then tell me. What did I do to you? I was choked. Fortunately, Max didn't ask any more questions. Eat quickly. Do you want me to send you to school? Yes. Schoolwork is busy. This is a crucial year. Max changed to a motorcycle and took me to and from school from 5 in the morning to 10 at night. Regardless of wind and rain. He almost has the same schedule as me. During the National Day holiday, there are only 3 days off. Max was injured. There was a long cut on his arm and he had 5 or 6 stitches. You are a driver and only responsible for driving. No one stipulates that you should help move express deliveries. Moreover, it doesn't seem that those people are very grateful to you. Now work-related injuries are not compensated. I don't understand what you are thinking. I carefully disinfect and change the dressing. Frowning and can't help lecturing him. Max leans on the sofa and says with a smile, "The girl has grown up and knows how to care for others." He suddenly holds my wrist. "Do you want to kill your brother?" The palm feels warm and spreads. The distance is very close. I bump into his deep pupil-like eyes. The light breeze surges in from the blinds. Fine and bright. On every inch of skin. Neighbors are bustling. But it is extremely quiet between us. Max gently releases his hand and looks away. I also calmly lower my head. Move gently. And help him wrap gauze. Brother. Be more careful next time. Got it. I'm serious. It's not your job. Why are you rushing to do it? Max takes out a cigarette and plays with it in his hand. Those workers work day and night. It's very hard. You also doctor day and night. It's also very hard. Who will care for you? Isn't there you? Max rubs the top of my head and sighs. When I saw it at that time, I helped. People have cause and effect. I was thinking that in the future when my sister goes to study and work in a big city, if she encounters difficulties, there will be someone who can help you. At that moment, I heard my own heartbeat. I don't want to go to any big city. I want to stay with my brother all the time. There are more development opportunities there. You will understand later. What about you? Will you come with me? Max smiles. Wendy, your brother is uneducated and only wants you to move forward well. I blurt out, no. What if you get married and have children behind my back? What should I do? Max's action of lighting a cigarette pauses for a moment. I don't know if he heard it. What? I bite my lip for a long time. Nothing. I'm going to do my homework. In the second semester of senior year in high school, I make a final sprint. At the same time, inexplicably, I start to feel unnatural when I see Max and even dare not talk while looking at each other. That day, while eating well, Max taps the tabletop with his fingertip. Are you in love? I was so scared that I almost choked. Impossible. Is there someone you like? I look at him and say slowly. No. Then you are fidgeting all day long. Seeing me is like seeing a ghost. I refute. No. You are wrong. Afraid that he won't believe me, I quickly change the topic. Brother, there are many puppy loves in our school. They even write love letters. Max has also been through this age. He casually asks, is there one written to you? I didn't lie. Yes. How did you reply? I haven't replied yet. How should I reply? Study hard and tell him to go away. That day, Max sent me to school as usual. Not long after I walked into the school gate, my friend Lily catches up and pats me on the shoulder. Your brother is still as handsome as ever. She is my junior high school classmate. She has eaten at my house and seen Max many times. I say, why didn't you be late today? Lily glares at me and then looks forward. I will find a boyfriend like your brother in the future. Good looking, good at cooking, and a good person. I nod and smile. He is indeed very good. Very good to me. Very good. Lily puts her arm around mine. Wendy. It's decided. You keep an eye on your brother. When I graduate, I will definitely be your sister-in-law. I feel a little uncomfortable. You are 8 years older than my brother. What's wrong with being 8 years older? He will be caring. Understand? I fall silent. Lily continues. Don't think about this. The college entrance examination is coming soon. Where are you going to study? Just in the city. There is only one second-tier university in the city. With your grades, it's really a waste of talent. I think for a while. Anywhere in the province. I want to be close to home. What about you? As for me, I still don't know if I can pass the exam. The two girls joke freely and are full of laughter. Never thought that after graduation, there will be only separation in different places. The college entrance examination is in full swing. All sections of the road are prohibited from honking. Police can be seen everywhere, guarding the future of millions of students. I handed in the last test paper. I just felt that it was over. And it also began. Max had been waiting for me at the door. I was so excited that I threw myself into his arms. Brother, I want to dye my hair. Perm my hair and wear a short skirt. Okay. Make a feather duster style. I slapped him. Only then did I notice that there was a gift in his hand. Max's eyes and brows were full of smiles. He raised his eyebrows at me. In a low voice, kid. Happy graduation. In that year, smartphones had not been fully popularized. That was the first touchscreen mobile phone in my life. But Max himself was still using a little smartphone that could only make calls. I asked him why he didn't get a new one for himself. He explained lazily. I'm getting old. I don't understand flashy things. I'll talk about it later. He was clearly only in his late 20s. I couldn't help curving my lips. Thank you. Max was in a good mood and patted the back of my head. Why are you being polite to your brother? The time waiting for the results was very anxious. Fortunately, I performed normally and was admitted in the first batch. I was admitted to a university in Shanghai. It only takes 3 or 4 hours by train to get home. Max was in a good mood and cooked several more dishes. But in the middle, he received a phone call and then planned to go out. Where are you going? Max's tone remained unchanged. Your teacher Lynn had a flat tire while riding a bike near our house. You can contact a repair shop. Why contact you? After all, she is your head teacher. It's only right for me to go and take a look. Teacher Lynn. Sharon. She was only my head teacher for 1 year, and was transferred to another school in senior 3. But even after leaving, she was still very concerned about my Chinese grades. Brother. Do you often contact teacher Lynn besides my studies? No. Why? I lowered my eyes. Nothing. It wasn't far from home. Max didn't drive. He squatted down and inspected for a while. We need to change the tire. Park it here first and call someone to repair it tomorrow. Sharon's black hair was almost waist length. Under the dark color. Her skin looked even fairer. Sorry for the trouble. I'll treat you to a meal some other day. Max stood up. No need. How are you going back? Sharon had a smile on her face and asked instead. I haven't congratulated Wendy on being admitted to university. Help me pass on a message. Thinking of the little one sitting obediently at the dining table. Max's lips curved slightly. Well, thank you. Sharon said. It's okay. In the future, when Wendy is in college and doesn't have time to come back often, don't you consider starting a family? Max was used to being casual. At the moment, he lit a cigarette. I haven't considered it. Is it that you haven't considered it? Or is it that you can't be with the person you like? Max didn't want to talk about such unnutritious topics. But when he heard this, he paused. Call your friend to pick you up. Seeing him change the topic, Sharon could only say, I'm from out of town. I don't have many friends here. I'll call a taxi for you. You said it's not safe at night. The evening breeze blew. Max extinguished the cigarette. His movement paused. He looked at Sharon calmly and sideways. After a long while. My sister is at home alone. I'm not very relieved. There was no emotion in his eyes. Just let me know when you get home safely. The sky was gloomy. Dark clouds covered the black curtain. I washed the dishes. Watched TV for a while. And then sat in the living room in a daze. Women probably have an innate sixth sense. Max was single. Good looking. Had a stable job. And was motivated and down to earth. It's normal for him to be liked and chased by others. I know I shouldn't be greedy. Max is my brother. It's enough for him to be by my side. But I don't understand. Why am I so sad? Time passed slowly. I made a phone call to him. Brother, is the matter resolved? Is Teacher Lin okay? It was very quiet at the other end of the receiver. His voice was deep. She's fine. Why haven't you slept yet? It's only so early. I'm not in school. I looked at the rain outside the window and picked at the fabric of the sofa with my fingernail. It's raining. Are you coming back at night? Would I sleep on the street if I don't go home? 10 minutes. I'm already at the intersection. I smiled. I'll pick you up. The rain looked small, but holding an umbrella. One could only hear the pattering. Max got out of the taxi. He took the umbrella in my hand and tilted it a lot towards me. Seeing the mud on my clothes, he frowned and asked, Where did you fall? I told you to wait for me at home. You just don't listen. Nee. I smiled guiltily. I'm just afraid you'll get caught in the rain. Max was helpless and handed me the umbrella again. Take it. He squatted down. Get on. The lights inside the flat-roofed houses on both sides were dim yellow. They wove a net that enveloped the long alley. Even people's hearts felt stuffy. Brother. Am I heavy? No. That's good. For some inexplicable reason. No one spoke anymore. I lay on his shoulder. And my breath fell on his neck. As if possessed. I slowly moved closer. The air was damp and the cold wind rustled. Everything was frozen. Wendy. I paused for a moment. My lips were only a tiny distance from his skin. What's wrong? Max was silent for half a second. Nothing. I said. Owen grinned. Will you miss me when I go to college? Max lifted his arm. Miss what? Finally sending the ancestor away. I was slightly stunned and angrily bit his neck directly. At that moment, the blue veins on the man's neck tightened. And he suddenly stopped walking. My heart pounded. Brother. I didn't mean it. Max stiffened his body. Lifted his foot again. And said in a soft voice. Behave. My mind was in a mess. I didn't know what he was thinking. When I got home and came out after taking a bath slowly, it was already an hour later. Max sat with his legs apart, leaning against the sofa, his gaze on the TV. I'm done. You go and take a bath. He seemed to come to his senses. He nodded but didn't show any sign of getting up. Yodo pH or cotton swabs are on the table. It's just a small injury. I don't need it. Disinfection heals faster. Be obedient. I nodded and said yes. Back in my room. I heard the sound of running water outside. The door opened and closed. For a long time. The TV was still on. When I went out again. Only then did I find that the man had fallen asleep leaning against the sofa. The light and shadow on the TV kept changing. Max had his eyes closed. And his profile was smooth. Calm yet wild. I watched for a while. Finally, my gaze stopped on his lips. People are greedy. Love is a divine thing. When it exists, it often spreads like a raging fire. I couldn't help it. I gently leaned closer. And kissed him. Our breaths intertwined. I held the sweat in my palm, felt his breath, looked at his drooping eyelashes. And in those few seconds, his eyelashes moved for an instant and finally opened slowly. At that moment, all sounds disappeared. I quickly backed away and stood up. The heat spread from my neck to my ears. The movement was so big that Max's thin eyelids also lifted. His pupils were cold and silent. I panicked and fled back to my room. With my back against the door, my heart beat violently. It was as if there was a cloth stuck in my throat. I suddenly wanted to cry. The night continued. Someone was smoking silently. The TV in the living room was on all night. I didn't fall asleep until almost dawn. When I woke up, I found that Max wasn't at home. There were meals he had prepared in the refrigerator. In the following days, he left early and returned late. And there were also many phone calls. Even if we happened to eat at the same table, he never mentioned that night. I knew he was avoiding me. I woke up late for several days in a row, thinking about whether to break this awkward atmosphere. "Wendy, are you awake?" Max called me from outside the door. I stuck my head out from under the quilt and said in a muffled voice, "Yes." He said, "Come out and talk." I prepared myself mentally, waiting for him to mention that night. But he leaned against the sofa and looked at me deeply. "Wendy, do you miss your family?" I suddenly looked up. "What?" Max handed me a business card. "You have a father. A paternity test has confirmed that you are related. The police have intervened. It should be correct. I have no parents. If Max hadn't taken me out of the mountains, I would have been beaten to death by my aunt's family long ago." My eyes reddened. "Brother, how is it possible? My dad isn't dead." That's what they all said. Max hesitated for a moment but still raised his hand to wipe my tears. "Go and meet him. He had no idea of your existence at all. Only when your aunt let it slip back in your hometown did he come looking for you immediately. His name is Elian. He has a kind and friendly face." At the first sight of him, I knew he was my father. He said that my mother was his first love. But back then, my grandma thought he was poor and firmly disagreed. After he went to work in the city, the two of them had no contact anymore. He thought my mother had got married and had children. Unexpectedly, he still had a daughter. The man panicked and rubbed his eyes. The whites of his eyes were full of redness. "You look a lot like your mother." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Even if we are father and daughter, I only feel strange towards him. During this period, Elian came to see me every day. To thank Max, he gave him a sum of money. He didn't take it. He just said that it would be good if he treated me well. At the dinner table, there are only the two of us. Max is on the night shift today. He eats quickly and never glances at me. "Leave it after you finish eating. I'll wash it when I come back." I called out to him. "Brother." Max stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong?" I poked at the rice in my bowl. "For a long time. Are you not going to want me anymore?" Max was stunned. Then he faintly curved his lips. "No. Don't think too much." That night, he glanced at the sky and interrupted. "It's going to rain at night. Remember to close the doors and windows." I stared at him and stubbornly continued. "That night. I don't regret it." The living room fell silent. The rain came as soon as it was said. In the strong wind, the branches flailed again and again, letting mistakes be made over and over again. Max tensed his jawline and reached for a cigarette. "It's getting late. Brother." He looked over. "Do you still know that I am your brother?" "But you're not my biological brother." "Max, you're not my biological brother." That was the first time I called him by his name. It was also the first time I firmly and fearlessly liked someone. The living room was quiet again. Max's Adam's apple bobbed as he lit a cigarette, but didn't smoke it. He let the cigarette butt fall. He sighed. He said, "Wendy, you will meet many people in the future. You will meet many people who can give you a better life. Instead of living with me in this dilapidated house that doesn't know when it will be demolished. I said. What if I just want to live with you? Max always kept his eyes down. After a few seconds, he said hoarsely, "It's not worth it. You are young. You only depend on me. Later, you will know how stupid these things are." I understand everything he said. I have confirmed it to myself over and over again. Confirmed how impure this feeling is. I tried hard to argue for myself. But looking at his indifferent appearance, I suddenly realized that the relationship between me and Max had been set since the moment he raised me. If I weren't your sister, would you like me? Even a little bit? I struggled in his eyes like a suddenly rising flame. Max slowly tightened his palm. Wendy, you can only be my sister. His Adam's apple rolled. After a long time. For anything else. I can't think about it. The new semester is about to start. Ellie sends me to school. Max drags my suitcase. The sun is scorching. His voice is very soft. Your dad lives in Shanghai. When you are on vacation, go home and visit more. Get along well with your younger brother. I stand in front of the car and my nose starts to tingle again. As things stand, our relationship is awkward. I should give up. But I turned wouldn't lie and still carefully tugged at his clothes. Brother. I was wrong. I tightly grasped his clothes and sobbed silently. I will never dare again. Brother. Don't abandon me. I will never say that I like you again. Please. Don't abandon me. My values and my upbringing were all taught by him. The first time I took an ID photo. The first time someone sent me to school. The first time someone was nice to me. It was also him. My teenage years and adolescence are all filled with his shadow. And from now on and in the future, this person will be forcibly pulled out of my life. I can't accept it. From age to age. A full number years. And it's not also his number years. Max looked away. His eyes also reddened. He wanted to say something but finally choked it back. Let's go. Be obedient. He said it very calmly. He stood in place and watched me leave calmly. Outside the car. There was a thunderstorm even though it was sunny. Raindrops fall on the car window. And the window seems to shed tears too. Trees cast shadows. The stray dog that I often feed in the long alley chases my car and barks non-stop. It seems to be asking me to turn back. Or it seems to be asking me not to turn back. I remember. 6 years ago in the mountains. My aunt slapped me. He helped me wipe the bloodstains and gently asked me who did it. I remember. When I was bruised and huddled in the corner. He squatted down and said, I'm Max. Will you come with me? I remember countless nights when he said, what would you like to eat? He said, remember to close the doors and windows. He said, Wendy, move forward well. I thought I wouldn't cry anymore. Until I opened the suitcase and saw the thick stack of 40,000 yuan hidden in the clothes. Tears flowed down again. I thought parting was just a stage of reluctance. Unexpectedly, it was like a raging avalanche, burying the way to and fro. Occasional exchanges of festival greetings on mobile phones. Also in the years. It fades into the torrent. Elian feels very guilty towards me, and has never been stingy with money. After graduating from university, I went to study for a master's degree at the University of Technology, Sydney. Not long after, my wallet and mobile phone were stolen. Fortunately, a compatriot took me to the police station, helped me with the loss reporting procedures, and found them back only after waiting late into the night. In the end, that person also sent me back to my residence. In the deep winter of Sydney, the prosperous buildings are staggered high and low, and the neon lights are printed in the night sky like stars. I stand alone at the intersection. The cold wind cuts through my throat, and all I can think of are Max's eyes. Brother, you are right. People have causes and effects. There is really someone who helps me. I can't hold back anymore. Trembling, I send him a message. But at the moment of sending, I clicked to withdraw. Helplessly, I squat down and shed silent tears. Time passes like flowing water. I cut my hair last year, and now it reaches my waist again. As I am about to graduate from my postgraduate program, after reading my thesis, my supervisor suggests that I go to the UK to continue my studies. Teacher, I want to go home. I remember your father immigrated here. Is there someone else important in the country? I smiled and said nothing. 5 years. What has the city become? What have people become? I returned to this place where I grew up again. Through the Talent Introduction Program, I joined the Research and Development Department of a semiconductor company. After the new employees gathering and having a meal, we casually found a late-night snack shop. But I met an acquaintance, a classmate from middle and high school. Seeing each other again now. Her features have become much more mature. Pregnant. She is busy back and forth. I called her name, Lily. The girl looked over when she heard this and her eyes lit up. Oh. Wendy. Why didn't you tell me when you came back? I curved my lips. I planned to contact you after settling down. Lily hurriedly wiped her hands and smiled. I said so. You couldn't not tell me. Your brother is also like this. He didn't say a word. Are these your colleagues? I'll give you a few dishes. Wait a moment. Mentioning Max. I paused. No need. You're busy. We can't eat so much. It's okay. It'll be quick. Wait a moment. Lily's husband is a college classmate. After struggling in a first-tier city for a year, later, the two had the same idea and opened a restaurant back in their hometown. Life went on like this. When the time was almost up, several colleagues said goodbye and left one after another. I chatted with Lily for a while longer. Her husband came back from delivering takeout. This is my husband. Just call him Chen Li. Lily put her arm around my shoulder and introduced. This is the classmate I often mentioned to you. She has returned from overseas. Isn't she amazing? Your wife also has connections. The man has an honest face and greets me politely. Then he takes the rag from his wife's hand and massages her shoulders. There are waiters in the store. Didn't I tell you to rest well? Lily patted his hand. It's not like I can't move. It's okay to help. Watching this scene, I smiled gently. Lily's gaze suddenly looked behind me. Brother Lee. You got off work early today. Look who's here. It's always this time. After many years. Hearing his voice again, I subconsciously turned around. Max stood at the door, seemingly lifting his eyelids at the same time. In his amber pupils, there is the same stagnation as mine. The light rain outside has just stopped. The man is wearing a black. Water droplets slowly roll down sparsely. Standing tall. His features haven't changed much from a few years ago. There is even a more mature gritty feeling. I suddenly remembered a rainy day. He was also caught in the rain, wearing a black, standing by the roadside and buying me sweet potatoes. At that time, he was still riding a motorcycle. He put the sweet potatoes in the inner pocket, and said that this way they wouldn't get cold by the time we got home. Max was silent for a long time, looking at me all the while. Finally, he came to his senses. He asked in a daze. When did you come back? Have you eaten? I nodded. Yes. Last week. Lily was surprised. Wendy. So you came back quietly. You want to give me and your brother a surprise? I was speechless for a moment, and looked at the sky. I have to go back. Max also moved his feet. Perhaps after a busy day. He suddenly felt numbness in his feet. It's raining. Let me take you. He looked a bit at a loss. 5 years. We have all changed. He said that later I would know how stupid I was at that time. Now I am standing in the future. Stupid? I don't know. Only knowing that I came back here and saw this man who pulled me out of the quagmire. Putting aside the inappropriate affection, I should regard him as a relative and repay him. The rain washes the cement ground. Dampened, gloomy. The wind lifts the skirt. I get in the car. Why did you come to Lily's place? Max said. He is your friend. She bought a lot of baby things when she was pregnant. I passed by the express station and delivered them for her. I nod and say nothing more. After a while, he asks, Are you doing well? I smile. Didn't you contact my dad? He didn't treat me badly. Max purses his lips. As long as you are doing well. I ask. Are you busy with work? It's just so. A bit easier than before. He starts the engine. Is it a rented house? Company dormitory. Max feels his pocket as if looking for a lighter, but finally gives up. He says, Do you still remember this road? I look out of the window. How could I not remember? It is the only way I must take day, then night when going to and from school. He rides a motorcycle and I hold his waist. The flowing light clearly sways. It is the beginning of every old dream of mine. I sniff and change the topic. Brother, when did you change your car? Max glances at the steering wheel. In the 3rd year after you left. We chat intermittently along the way. When we arrive at the address, I unfasten my seat belt and open the door. Wendy. The dim light casts a shadow on his cheek. His gaze is dim. Hearing this, I turn my head. What's wrong? Max's lips move and he sighs and says, There is not much light in the corridor. Be careful. Let me know when you get home. The evening wind messes up my hair and tickles the corner of my eye. I utter a sound. Brother. Be careful on the road. He looks at me. Okay. On a desolate and sultry night. There is a car parked downstairs and it hasn't moved for a long time. The man's elbow is resting on the window edge. And there is a little scarlet between his fingers. The cigarette ash falls. The dilapidated and rotten thoughts are like being reborn. Work is on the right track. At a suitable age. Many people introduce partners to me. I find reasons to politely refuse. Until facing my immediate superior's matchmaking. I really can't refuse. After having a polite and plain afternoon tea. As soon as I get in a taxi. The phone rings. A number deeply engraved in my mind. I stare at it in a daze and pick it up. Brother. Will you come back for dinner tonight? It is very quiet on his end. It seems that he is sitting in the living room at home and makes this call to me. I have to work tomorrow. I want to go back and rest early. After a 2-second pause, Max says, Okay. The setting sun outside the windowed eyes half of the sky red. He continues, Then remember to eat on time. Don't diet. It's not good for your stomach. I utter a sound. Neither of us hangs up the phone. I understand him. Staring at the passing vehicles. Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. Brother. Have you already cooked the meal? Max is exposed and smiles faintly. It's okay. Your work is important. I had originally planned to go back and take a look. In the familiar long alley. The trees are still the same trees. The neighbors are still the same neighbors. In that house where I lived for a long time. My room is clean and tidy. It can be seen that it is often cleaned. The decoration and furniture have also been replaced. When I was in high school, I liked to climb onto the roof very much and look at the expressway not far away to look for his passing truck. I would always wave with a smile. And he would also flash his lights twice to tell me that he saw me. Thinking of the past. The corners of my lips subconsciously rise. That period was indeed the happiest time for me. Probably seeing that I was a bit embarrassed when I saw him after our reunion. Max invited Lily's family to have a meal together. Your brother is very busy. As a boss. He still drives. If it weren't for your sake today, it would be really not easy to have a meal together. Max's former motorcade has expanded a lot in recent years and is now specialized in running logistics lines in Jiangsu, Zhejiang and Shanghai. I glance at him. Don't you rest on weekends? He is peeling shrimps and doesn't look up. There is nothing to do at home. You see, whoever marries your brother will be blessed. He just thinks about making money all day. I smile. There are a few more peeled shrimps in my bowl. Seeing that I don't speak, Lily remembers something. Wendy. You still talk about others. Why didn't you come to play with me on weekends? What were you busy with? I slowly put the shrimp into my mouth. Blind date. As soon as these words are uttered, Max's movements pause. I reach out to pick up dishes. My sleeve droops down and almost touches the food. He holds my wrist in time and rolls up my sleeve while looking down. As natural as he has done it countless times before. Lily is curious. Yes. You are so beautiful. The blind date line must reach your house. You must be careful and find someone you truly like and who is truly good to you. Like your brother. I want to interrupt her. The words are on the tip of my tongue. Max looks over sideways. What's the other person like? I have no reason to belittle others. Casually. I said. It's okay. Pretty good. I thought he would say that's good. But there was no sound in my ear. Lily's gaze circled around and she chuckled awkwardly. Speaking of blind dates. Wendy. You have to persuade your brother. He's already in his early 30s. At this age. Others have had a second child. But he still says he hasn't met the right one. If the right one was to be met, it would have been met long ago. Max shifted his gaze. Let's eat. The dishes are getting cold. After the meal, Lily felt a bit uncomfortable in her stomach and went home first. I was also about to leave. I'll see you off. No need. I've booked a taxi. You take a rest. Max looked at me. Has the car arrived? I shook my head. There are still 10 minutes. Max lowered his eyes. His voice hoarse. He said, Wendy. Sit with me for a while. He is still a head taller than me. His profile is tall and straight and he is also taciturn. Suddenly, I tried to imagine what kind of life he had lived after leaving all those years ago. On the sofa, I smoothed the hem of my skirt. Brother. Have you been alone all these years? Max put his coat over my legs. Yes. I'm used to it. In fact, you should start a family. I said softly. The surroundings were so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Only then did I feel the emptiness and loneliness. I went to look for you in Sydney. He said. I was stunned for a moment. When? Last winter. Max smiled bitterly. I didn't understand the language. I went with a tour group. Coincidentally. As soon as I arrived at your school gate. I saw you. Last winter. I remember. At that time. I squatted by the roadside and sent him a message saying that I missed him. But the message that was withdrawn in just 2 seconds was seen by him. Suddenly, my eyes became hot and I asked in a muffled voice. Why didn't you tell me at that time? Max stared at the old TV. Your dad said that you have very good grades and have a chance to pursue a Ph.D. in the future. You also have a boyfriend. That day I saw you get into the same car. Elian intentionally introduced me to the son of his friend. So I lied and said I had a boyfriend. That day, when my compatriots' schoolmates had a dinner gathering, I happened to finish class with a male classmate and got into the same car. But these are not reasons why he can't tell me. I clenched the clothes on my legs and repeated. I don't have a boyfriend. So why didn't you look for me when you came? Suddenly, I felt a sense of powerlessness. I know that he always hopes that I can live a good life. He has watched me grow up almost all my life. He has his worldly shackles. Just like what he said before. There are other things that I can't think about. So, I can't blame him. The phone rang. The driver had arrived. I hurriedly rubbed my eyes and covered my red-rimmed eyes with my hair. I'll go first. You rest early. Max got up. There was an unfathomable expression in his eyes that I couldn't understand. Take these back with you and see if you can return them. I can't wear them. I didn't come empty-handed. I bought him a few pieces of clothes according to the approximate's eyes. Looking sideways at the black short-sleeved shirt on him that had been washed countless times, I said, Brother, I've grown up and I earn money too. You should be better to yourself. He fell silent. After I took 2 steps, I turned back. By the way, I transferred tens of thousands of you onto your card. See if you have received it. Max's body froze in place. Wendy, I don't need you to do this. I sniffed and said with a smile. Brother, take care of yourself. That night, I didn't sleep well. When Max learned that the food in my cafeteria wasn't very good, he often brought me meals during that time. The company address is in a newly developed industrial park, 30 or 40 kilometers away from him. That day was my birthday. Coincidentally, it was on the same day as my roommates, so I invited a few colleagues and celebrated together. In the evening, Max called and said he had stewed chicken soup. I remember you used to like drinking it very much. Is it okay to deliver it downstairs to your building? He is always so simply kind to me. Just like he always says that bringing me meals is because it's on his way. I looked at the time, after slowly. A colleague suddenly came over. I thought it was about work. Unexpectedly, she said, Engineer Zhang, is the handsome guy downstairs in the company yesterday your man? Someone chimed in. I've seen him for several days in a row. No wonder our engineer Zhang has high standards. It turns out that she likes this kind of mature and masculine man who looks strong. They are all older and are locals who were born and raised here. They speak directly and primitively. I was teased until my ears turned red. I picked up my bag. It's a misunderstanding. He is my brother. As soon as I closed the door, the voices inside became even more gossipy. Hey, before you finish, is your brother single? I just got divorced. I breathed a sigh of relief. I entered the elevator. I clicked on my phone and found that the call lasted for more than 5 minutes before Max hung up. The dormitory is close to the company. Tonight, there is also the only male colleague I am familiar with who came to celebrate our birthdays. I always call him Xiao Yu. We happened to meet at the gate of the community, walking side by side downstairs. I saw Max at a glance. He was wearing the clothes I bought for him, leaning lazily against the car body. His shoulders were relaxed and drooping, and his facial features were clear. Inadvertently turning his head, our eyes met. His eyes froze for an instant, and he slowly stood up straight. I asked, Brother, when did you arrive? Xiao Yu is also very polite. He greeted him repeatedly and also called him brother. I just arrived not long ago. Max's gaze swept over and was silent for a moment. In a low voice, he said, Remember to heat it up when you go upstairs. What he handed over was not only a lunchbox. Looking at the other bag, I didn't know what to say for a moment. Max said, Birthday present. Every year on my birthday, he would prepare a gift for me. Even for the 12 years when he wasn't involved in my life when I lived at my aunt's house, he made up for the birthday gifts. I murmured, Thank you. In the plum rain season, the clouds are thickly gathered. I walked into the unit building absentedly, but couldn't help looking back. That derailed train has long taken root on another path after so many years. Those fragmented happinesses seem to have had their timelines removed. They are roughly broken apart and crushed. I am determined to repay him, as if he were my own brother. At this moment, I struggle and suppress. There is always a rebellious voice telling you that it's not like this. It shouldn't be like this. Suddenly turning around, the man is still standing there, looking at my back. I shouted loudly, Brother, wait a moment. I hurriedly ran upstairs, found an umbrella, and then came back. Max was leaning against the car body and smoking, with his head lowered. He didn't know what he was thinking. The car can't drive to the door. That alley is quite long. Don't get caught in the rain, I said. Max didn't rush to take it. The faint smoke between his fingers slowly dispersed. Did he celebrate your birthday with you? His voice was a bit hoarse. I didn't hear clearly. What? Big raindrops fell without warning. I raised my hand to cover my forehead. As I turned to leave, I didn't forget to urge him. Brother, go quickly. I'll go up first. There were muffled rumbles of thunder. Fortunately, this rain only lasted for that short while. 5 or 6 people had dinner. They were about the same age and there was continuous laughter. Xiao Yu waved his mobile phone in front of me. There's a call coming. Wendy. Don't sleep. I'll answer it for you. I don't have a good tolerance for alcohol. I was lying on the table and mumbled in confusion. The call was connected. The others became quiet knowingly. My head was groggy and I couldn't hear the voices around me clearly. Brother. It's me. She's drunk. Don't come over. It's okay. We have a very good relationship. Don't worry with me here. I probably slept for more than 2 hours in the middle. At dawn, I was woken up by their card game. Almost until dawn did the party end. On the weekend, I couldn't sleep after the time passed. So I simply went downstairs to have breakfast. The scenes from last night came back intermittently. As I went down the stairs, I casually flipped through my mobile phone. But my footsteps suddenly stopped. I thought I was seeing things. I saw Max. Some people are like nails in the heart. Even if pulled out, they are accompanied by a lifetime of dull pain. I forgot how I walked over. He was sitting on a bench with his legs spread, looking downcast and gloomy. I called out to him. Brother. Why are you here? The man's fingertips paused for a moment as if he had come to his senses. With morning dew on his clothes, his gaze was soft. He slowly got up. I was worried. So I came to take a look. Standing opposite each other, I didn't ask further. Have you had breakfast? Max looked at me and shook his head. I pulled his sleeve. I'll treat you. Before I could take half a step, he grabbed my arm instead. His Adam's apple moved slightly, and there was restraint in his eyes. Did you spend the night together last night? His palm was hot. Through the fabric, a tremor spread. I was stunned, ignoring the tension in my thoughts. I explained softly. There were many people. Not just him. We played until dawn and then left. The fingertips holding my arm tight and for a moment and then relaxed lightly. I didn't smile from the bottom of my heart. Brother. Have breakfast with me. Max wiped the table, and then scalded my spoon and chopsticks with hot water again. Don't stay up late. It's not good for your health. I took a bite of wonton. Occasionally it's okay. You didn't sleep either. After saying that, it was a bit awkward. Max scoffed lightly for a moment. I'm also occasional. For some reason. I wanted to laugh. At the same time, the tip of my tongue was scalded by the hot wonton soup until my scalp tingled. Max frowned and quickly reached out. Spit it out. Hurry up. I opened my mouth slightly and breathed out, seeing the impatience in his eyes and the palm waiting by my mouth. Then, I swallowed it directly, and drank another mouthful of water. Max looked at me helplessly and handed me a tissue. Did it burn? I shook my head and said it was okay. In the end, Max paid for that breakfast. The bell rang. He stood at the store entrance and answered the call. Across the road, a mother and child were begging. Pedestrians were in a hurry and no one stopped. I felt my pocket. I didn't bring any cash. Looking at Max, he probably guessed what I meant and handed me his wallet. He moved his phone away from his ear and said to my back, "Slow down when you run." It took a little over a minute to go back and forth. Max had just hung up the phone. Was there any urgent matter? There is a problem with the bumper of a car. Then go and deal with it quickly. Max thought for a moment and then packed a portion of dumplings. Go back and have a good sleep. Eat when you wake up. I urged him. I know. Hurry up and go. He didn't move, looking at me as if he had something to say. Call me if there is anything. After he left, only then did I realize that I was still holding his wallet. I didn't look carefully just now. When I opened it again, I saw a photo in the secret compartment. The corners were a bit curled and faded. It seemed to be taken out and looked at often. That was a photo sticker taken when I went shopping with him after the college entrance examination and passed by a photo studio. He didn't like to smile in photos and felt awkward. After I scolded him, his mouth finally curled up a bit. In the photo, the man had deep features and a high nose bridge. I was lost in looking at it and smiled silently. National Day holiday. Lily gave birth to a chubby baby girl. After finishing my last day of work, I hurried to the hospital. The woman was half leaning against the hospital bed with a hat on. The man was standing and coaxing the baby to sleep. They were both smiling gently. This scene is ordinary yet filled with happiness. When only the two of us were left in the ward, Lily glanced at the watch on my wrist. From Max? I hummed in response. This brand is quite expensive. It's still a Valentine's Day limited edition. Does he like you? What are you thinking? What's the situation between you two now? I gently rocked the baby carriage and didn't understand. What do you mean by, what's the situation? You two don't look alike and have different surnames. Don't think I can't tell if I don't ask. In which families are siblings not annoyed with each other? But you two are afraid of not giving enough to each other. I lowered my eyes and didn't say a word. The voice beside me continued. Wendy. Don't think I'm talkative. I heard from an acquaintance neighbor that Brother Lee's parents passed away early. At that time, he had just been discharged from the military and stayed at home all day. His comrades in arms signed him up to be a volunteer in the mountains to relax. When he came back, there was you by his side. Later, he would go out to buy groceries and send you to and from school. Lily sighed and looked at her daughter. I used to think that life was too broad. Living selfishly and having a good life for oneself is better than anything else. But later, I had something to care about. Now there is one more thing to care about. Only then did I find that living well for them makes me even happier. Looking around, there are many people. Some of them haven't read many books. Some aren't traditional, honest, and clumsy. They earn money with gritted teeth all their lives just for the people they care about. I thought of that faded group photo and that steady and tenacious figure. Max. What is he living for? The door was suddenly knocked gently. It was Max. Lily turned and smiled. Daughter. Uncle Lee is here. Cry quickly. Fortunately, the baby was sleeping soundly. Max didn't notice the unusual atmosphere and didn't dare to get too close to the baby. After looking at it carefully for a while, he said, quite alike. I gave birth. Can it not be alike? Lily raised an eyebrow. You should hurry up too. If you get pregnant this year, you can give birth next year. Max clicked his tongue. Do you think it's an assembly line? Lily laughed so hard that her shoulders trembled slightly. But she glared at me. Look, don't you take care of this. As the sky gradually darkened, after chatting for a while, we left. Max seemed to be in a good mood. There was some smile in his eyes when he spoke. Let's go home and cook. It takes a long detour to get from here to the dormitory. After thinking for a moment, I nodded. What would you like to eat? He asked. In the car. I fastened my seat belt. Brother. Is there something good? Max started the engine and drove into the traffic. He curved his lips and smiled. Well, the loan has been paid off. For 5 years of blankness. I don't know what happened to him. At a red light, Max stopped the car and turned his head and said, open the storage compartment in front. Thinking he needed to take something, I reached out and pressed the switch. It was very empty inside. There was only a red book with the words Real Estate Ownership Certificate on it. 4 years ago, when housing prices weren't as high as they are now, Max gritted his teeth and mortgaged his old house. He took out a loan of 600 Zara yuan and bought an apartment in the urban area. As the green light turned, he shifted his gaze. It's for you. It hasn't been decorated yet. Tell me what style you like. His voice was very faint. As if giving a piece of clothing was so simple. My nose was sour and tears fell down without warning. It was a long time ago. I deeply remember that scene. Not long after he brought me back. When his friend saw that he was going to drive a truck, He persuaded him that raising a girl is different from raising a boy. Anyway, she will get married. It's almost enough. There's no need to earn that hard-earned money. Max was leaning against the sofa and smoking. In the same faint tone, he said, "What's wrong with a girl? Can't she have a house?" He remembered this promise. Through the changing seasons, he silently stood behind me, kindly held me tight, and kindly let me go. How can there be such a person in the world? Rough and silent, yet with the vitality of wild growth. How can I bear not to love him? Tears kept streaming down my face. My heart ached as if being gnawed. I suddenly closed the cabinet. "Brother, I don't need it. You live by yourself." Seeing this, Max was a little panicked. He freed a hand and rubbed the top of my head. "Why are you crying? This is originally yours." But the more he said, the more tears gushed. I trembled and said, "I don't want it." Max had no temper, and took out a tissue again. "Okay. Don't cry. Be obedient." He looked ahead and could only roughly wipe my tears. "Your brother is not short of money now. It was lucky to buy it at that time. What would you like to eat tonight?" Max cooked 3 dishes. I helped serve the bowls. For a moment, it seemed like going back to the old days. After a simple meal, suddenly, dark clouds gathered in the sky. The rain was hesitating whether to fall or not. Max rubbed his fingertips. "I tidied up your room yesterday. Stay for one night. I'll send you back tomorrow." My heart was weighed down. I couldn't tell what it felt like. After being silent for a while, I said okay. By the sink. He washed the dishes and handed them to me. I stood beside and dried them. Max found new towels and clothes for me to change into. In the bathroom, the pants were too long to wear at all. Fortunately, the short-sleeved shirt was just long enough to cover the upper half of my thigh. When I came out after drying my hair, Max was smoking on the balcony, leaning against the windowsill. When he saw me, his gaze flickered for a moment. He extinguished the cigarette and also closed the curtain. "I'll get a coat for you. I'm not cold just after taking a bath. The weather is getting cooler. You'll catch a cold." I sat alone in the living room, covered with his shirt. The familiar smell filled my nose. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Max came out, wiping his hair with a towel. "Drink water?" I shook my head, got up and walked over, took the towel from his hand. "Let me help you." The lights in the room were not all on. Breaths collided. As the soft fingertips passed over the short hair, the temperature suddenly became sticky. Max stiffened and imperceptibly for a moment. His Adam's apple bobbed slightly, and he turned his face away. "All right. It will dry soon when the wind blows." "You said I might catch a cold. Won't you catch a cold?" Hearing this, he gave a very slight smile and slowly lowered his head so that I didn't have to stand on tiptoe. "Brother, does your neck still hurt? I bought a massager for you online a couple of days ago. It will arrive soon," Max said. "Why buy that? It will just gather dust in the cabinet." "Will it gather dust?" I put down the towel. Max lowered his eyes. Finally, with a helpless tone, he said, "All right. I'll use it. By the way, I have a holiday tomorrow. Let's go shopping and buy you a few more coats." "There are enough. Really no need." "Then what do you want?" Looking at each other, I stubbornly stared at him. Max sighed and raised his hand to hold my shoulder. "Wendy, I never expected you to repay me for anything." He bent down slightly. "It's all voluntary on my part. Don't feel that you owe me. I just want you to live a stable life." He was silent for a few seconds. His eyes dodged for a moment, and then he continued. "Even without me, as long as you live well, that's enough for me." I repeated this sentence in my mind. Even if I fall in love and get married, as long as I live well, it doesn't matter to you? But clearly, I am in your eyes. I turned my head and said softly, "Max, You are really spineless. The sky was still completely dark. The neighbors were still sitting under the shade of the tree chatting. The voices faintly reached my ears. The hand on my shoulder tight and tenuously and finally slowly let go. Max forced a smile. Yes. Quite spineless. His face was a little pale. You asked me why I didn't tell you when I went to Sydney. I also want to ask. Clearly I am your brother. Even if that's your boyfriend. I can ask openly. You were angry. Clearly I minded. I cared about the man by your side. I could go upstairs to find you. But Wendy. I have raised you for so long. You are my sister. But all these years He spoke incoherently. His eyes were bloodshot. Suppressed. Inferior. And self-restrained. I looked at him. Grabbed his collar and stood on tiptoe. I kissed him. Why be roundabout? Why be entangled? I know what you want to say. So do I. A touch and then a quick separation. Green and hard to suppress. Just like that night 6 years ago. My hand was still clutching his collar. The light shone down, outlining shadows on both of us. It was as if something suddenly loosened. Max lowered his eyes and looked at me through the tulle. There were tears shining in his deep eyes. After a long time, he bent down. His movements were also stiff. Gently, he held my lip. His palm was pressed on the edge of the table by my leg. Bowing his head. His kisses were dense and gentle. At this moment, the traditional shackles were thrown behind. It was the intertwined breasts of a man and a woman. 2 hearts were close together. Naked and straightforward. Only each other. He opened his mouth slightly and went deeper. Heat filled the air. I climbed onto his neck. I have wanted to do this for a long time. Suddenly there was a bang. The glass in the north room was broken. Max also released his lips. Only then did the neighbor shout to him. My grandson kicked the ball and broke your glass. Are you at home, Muse? I'll find someone to repair it for you tomorrow. The rustling sounds accompanied by scolding of the child gradually faded away. I couldn't help but smile. Max also smiled. Looking at each other. His fingertip rubbed my cheek for a moment, and then he leaned closer and kissed me again. The shirt hanging on his shoulder was about to fall off. So he simply took it off and spread it on the table. Holding my waist. He lifted me up and sat me on it. Outside. It was completely dark. It was raining. Tomorrow will be a fine day. Lily's daughter's full moon banquet was held in her own restaurant. It was already autumn. I was still wearing a long dress. Max pulled me and made me put on an extra coat. He bent his shoulder and carefully buttoned it up for me. I couldn't help but say, "Brother, I'm not a child anymore." But just after saying that, I tripped over the carpet at the door. Max supported my arm. A smile tugged at his lips. Is this still not a child? I laughed. Let's go quickly. Lily will be impatient. Max hummed. His hand was on the doorknob. After a few seconds, he turned around and took my hand. Let's go. His palm had some calluses. It firmly wrapped around my fingertip. Then our fingers intertwined. 5 years. Not long. Not short. It took 5 years for each other to be sure and let go. Now finally, we have got our wish. There were more than a dozen tables of guests. And there were also former high school classmates. We chatted for a long time. Max and I were not at the same table. In the middle. He was called out by a friend to smoke. He came over and told me. Who's this handsome guy? He looks so familiar. Someone slapped their thigh. Is he the one who often sent you to and from school in high school? Oh, Wendy. You had puppy love. No wonder when I wrote you a love letter. You told me to go away. They talked one after another. Max smiled and didn't refute. Letting them tease. He rubbed my hair. Drink less. After he left. The gossip didn't end. I picked up my wine glass and felt a bit embarrassed. Let's not talk about this anymore. Drink up. In just the time it took to drink 2 glasses, I suddenly felt a headache. Until the end. When I walked to the door, I ran into that classmate from earlier again. Having drunk a lot too. He slurred his words. It's really not easy for you two to talk until now. When are you getting married? Lily on the side was seeing off guests and followed with a mischievous smile. Yes. We're waiting to drink your wedding wine. Max, who didn't drink, helped me get into the car and then walked around to the driver's seat. I fell into a dazed sleep. When I woke up, the car had stopped, and there was his coat covering my legs. Through the trees, I could see my home in the distance. Max noticed I was awake and leaned over to unbuckle my seatbelt for me. He lifted his hand and brushed aside my stray hair, speaking softly. Can you walk? It was silent all around. I looked at his lowered eyebrows and eyelashes. My lips moved. Brother, do you want it? He didn't change his posture and nodded. Let's go look at rings tomorrow. The seat was adjusted backward. I gently straddled him and buried my head in the crook of his neck. My breath spilled out. I mean, do you want this? Max was clearly caught off guard and stiffened. Wendy, you're drunk. I shook my head and sank my waist a bit. Max's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Don't move around. I looked up at him gently. Our breaths intertwined. In the narrow space, only the irregular beating of our hearts could be heard. Max's Adam's apple rolled for a moment and then he couldn't hold back anymore. He pressed on my waist and kissed me. The back zipper was slowly pulled down by a pair of strong hands. The moonlight was dim and the passion was intense. Between breath, I asked him, Brother, are you in a hurry to get married? There was a little thin sweat on his forehead. He bit my lip and said hoarsely, Sooner or later. It's always you. Sooner or later. There was only one person on his mind. It was late at night. Finally, there was calm in the car. Max didn't take care of himself first. Instead, he leaned over to help me put on my clothes properly. When our eyes met, he pecked at the corner of my mouth. What are you looking at? My ears turned red. You don't know how to be shy. Max laughed when he heard this. Who was the one not being shy just now? Now my cheeks and neck were all red. I pushed him gently and said in a low voice, This time it seems I really can't walk. I lay on his shoulder again. He carried me on his back and walked slowly towards home. This long alley seemed to have no end forever. But there was always someone staying in the same place, waiting for me to turn back. A burst of music came from not far away. Ethereal. It was sung like this. Know that you are also not good at confessing. Imagine the lies woven by your love are slack. The sweet scenes actually fall down like fallen flowers. From then on, my life has turned into dust. I tightened my arms. Brother, let's go on a trip. Where do you want to go? Max turned his head and rubbed his face against mine. The branches by the roadside swayed. The shadows of the two people were closely intertwined. He said, Anywhere is fine. As long as you are there. A gust of wind blew. I suddenly remembered those summers when I sat by the window doing homework in a daze. Max called out from behind, Wendy, come and have a meal. Looking back, when I truly felt happiness. When I was determined to be restrained or unrestrained without hesitation. When I felt heartache. When I still felt indebted even after giving. I suddenly felt like crying. There are many ways to live in this world. The easiest way to live is to live for others. If there is someone in the world who happens to live for you, then, no matter how bitter life is, it is as sweet as a sweet potato. The end.